Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Drew Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry, from creative agencies who help wineries build meaningful connections with their customers, to today's guest, Ashley DuBois Leonard of InnoVint, who works tirelessly to bring the wine industry up to today's software standards. Today's episode, it's brought to you by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we know that your business is unique, and we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and makes your business stand out from your competitors. Ashley, in short, we unlock your brand story to unleash your revenue. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to last week's guest, Lori Milot of Outshinery. Lori and we talked about the importance of creating websites that are built upon empathy for your customer's struggle. So check out last week's episode to learn why it's important to build your site through the eyes of your customer rather than your product or service. I am super excited to have today's guest on our show, Ashley DuBois Leonard, founder and CEO of InnoVint. Now, Ashley is a winemaker-turned-technologist. After graduating with a degree of Viticulture and Enology, she spent nearly a decade as a winemaker, involved in all aspects of wine production. During this time on the production floor, she realized there had to be a better way to manage the production flow, and not seeing an adequate solution and not being content to wait around for someone else to find one, she decided to create one from scratch. So she founded InnoVint in 2013. And Ashley and her team immediately went to work to create a solution built by winemakers for winemakers. Today, InnoVint is the leading, and I have to say, most intuitive winery production software out there. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Oh, thank you for being on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and this journey. How did you make that transition from winemaker to technologist? But even before, what prompted you to become a winemaker?
Great question. So I went straight into the Viticulture and Enology department at Davis from high school, believe it or not. So at 18, 19, I somehow figured out that I wanted to make wine for a living.
Did you grow up in a wine family?
Interestingly, I did not. My parents are not big high-end wine drinkers. They are kind of satisfied with their, $8 to $10 mid-shelf Safeway selection. So it was not, I was not exposed to it at home, but it was more based on my science-based background. I loved the sciences and I knew that I wanted to do something in the sciences, but I also had this artistic element to myself where I really tried to find a profession where I could express both the data-driven side of me and the creative side of me. So I think that's what ultimately landed me at Davis in Viticulture and Enology.
Nice. And right after that, you went into winemaking. You were there for quite some time.
I did, yeah. So I went through the 4-year program, the undergrad program, and actually worked harvests along the way. So at 19, I just by happenstance met a gentleman, Michael Michaud, who had a small brand and introduced me to how to run a wine business, a winery business. And he did everything himself. And he just took me by the arm and showed me all the facets of how to manage a winery, which was incredibly valuable at 19, 20 years old.
Oh, I can imagine.
So I got that exposure early and then worked harvests around California in the summer and fall before school would kick back in. And then after college, had 3 harvests under my belt. And again, just through luck, a bit of luck, and through a mentor that I had built in Bill Bristow, the winemaker at Testarossa in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the Bay Area, introduced me to two gentlemen that were starting a wine brand, and they had planted 22 acres of vines and needed their first employee to kickstart their brand and to, spin up the hospitality department, to be their consulting winemaker with Bill Bristow at Testarossa. So I got a lot of exposure early on in my career to all the facets of winery management.
even that entrepreneurial, like you went in and just helped build it from the ground up from your early years in winemaking.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of have to find advisors and tap into a bit of schooling, but a lot of it's just, live and learn and absorb as much as you can from folks that have done it before. And I feel like we did a pretty good job in the 3 years that I was there, putting Black Ridge Vineyards on the map.
That's awesome. It's that figuring out a way to get it done. And that's sort of maybe why you were prompted as being a winemaker to see that there was a better way in your movement towards technology. Were you always, in the years you spent making wine, what were some of the problems that you faced that caused you to want to become a technologist?
Yeah, well, a lot of times I was off-site a lot, working in all facets of the winery business. I was looking for information into the winemaking process that was happening on site that I didn't have access to. And this was back in the late 2000s when the software in the industry was pretty archaic, and there are a lot of, on-premise legacy solutions that are just databases that would live in one person's head or one person's computer. And I didn't have access to that. So I had to bug these winemakers for information. Hey, did you top my wines last week? Hey, what's the recent Brix reading in our Pinot block A, right? Like I didn't have any access to those. And at the time I didn't know anything about software. I didn't know where it was going. And I, had used some of the tools on the market and was just dissatisfied. And complementing that, I was also living in Silicon Valley because I was working in the wine industry in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I saw the cool things that my friends were doing with software in Silicon Valley and thought, man, like how great it would be, to work in a faster paced environment, which is what ultimately led me to jump ship for a bit. But also work with some of these tools that are being developed for other industries that are so applicable in so many ways. So fast forward, I left the industry in 2010 for 2009, I think, and went into technology consulting, believe it or not, on the technical marketing front, and was studying mobility trends. Oh. And that's when I had that aha moment of, wouldn't it be great if there was a mobile driven solution for wine production? And wouldn't it be great if a winemaker designed it and built it from the ground up, and not, a CFO for a winery that's just needing their winemaker to plug and play, but like truly purpose built for winemaking to allow the lab team, the cellar team, the winemaking team, the viticulture team to be able to enter data, extract data, report on data from anywhere at any time.
And in the way that they're used to getting it too. Because again, the alternative would be a production flow company that says, oh, I think we should build this for the wine industry. So they just retweak what they're already doing in another industry. But you've decided to go straight from the ground up. So you didn't make any of those mistakes, or you didn't try to cram something that was built for some other application into something that would be used for wine, which we see a lot of time. I see that a lot of times, especially on POS software, and a lot of the winery software has been crammed in and not built from the ground up like what you've done.
Yeah, I filled a gap for sure. There was a gap at the time where, to your point, it was either someone that wasn't from a winery or wine production tried to make their system fit wine, which is very hard. We can go into that if you want. Or you have a winemaker that had this idea like me and thought, well, I'm going to kind of tinker with software myself and outsource some like development and see what I can come up with. So the product had more intention behind it, but it wasn't modern. So I took the depth of my winemaking experience and winery operational experience and said, I need to partner with great software engineers that are using modern tech stacks to do this right and do it well. So that was the difference, is the marriage of the winemaking experience with bringing modern tech to winemaking.
Fantastic. Can you think of one of those examples where your solution solved a problem because you built it from the ground up rather than the way that maybe another solution might have crammed it in from the side?
Sure. Yeah. And this gets kind of technical, but wineries are doing the challenging thing about wine production software and why a lot of these larger companies won't touch it, like ERP software, won't really build purpose-built wine production software, is because of the liquid management process, and the blending that takes place is super complex. So, you may pick from 10 different blocks, you may process them together, you may do a juice bleed, you may do 4 different press fractions, you then go to barrel, you're topping it along the way, all these different milestones along the winemaking process, you're changing the composition. And you're seeing volume gains and losses. And there's so much around the process that needs to be tracked for compliance purposes. And ultimately, that's why everyone needs production software, is because you're reporting to the TTB, you're making alcohol, they care about this. You need to get them reports on the exact steps that you're taking to make this.
And understand that compliance landscape is huge.
Huge. Yes. And we're just one element of the large landscape, but it's a super essential element to get right. So to answer your question, it's the nuances behind winemaking workflow and capturing what actually happens on the cellar floor in terms of the blends that take place. You're, blending 10 tanks into 500 barrels. And you may have some lees that you retain and keep behind, and that has a composition. You're tracking that. So it's just really intentional and purpose-built for winemaking.
That's awesome. What were some of the challenges you faced? I mean, building something from scratch, even surrounding yourself with the best and the brightest, there had to have been some challenges.
Oh gosh, of course, many challenges along the way. Yes. So looking back now that we're 8 years in, when I founded the company and partnered with some alpha and beta wineries in Napa, Sonoma to help us build this out with intention, it was pretty novel. The idea that their team or their winery could bring a mobile device to their winemaking workflow kind of blew their mind. It was pretty bleeding edge. Like they were used to not bringing technology out of the office, right? You sat behind a desk to do all of your winery work when winemaking is not done behind a desk. So yeah, like a lot of education around like, here's the empowering part of why it makes sense to bring a mobile solution to your team. And you want to empower your team. You want that accountability on a team member basis for what they're doing and how they're doing it. So a lot of education for the industry, a lot of challenges, right, in building software fast and iterating on it. So our product to track from block to grape to bottle is incredibly complex and comprehensive. And to do that right and do that well takes time. And we just want to get this in the hands of wineries. So yeah, the challenge of just, balancing time to market while also keeping one of our top values, integrity, in mind, that, we're not going to just get something to market for the sake of getting it to market. We want it to be great, and we want it to work right, and we want to, follow the right process. So those are just some examples of challenges that we have.
And you're also on the leading edge with it, you being a software as a service. And it's not some like archaic software that you're going to install in a box that gets obsolete that you have to renew every year. So you're constantly innovating and you're constantly improving on the thing, and your customers are constantly getting better, more intuitive.
Yeah, no, that's a valid point too, is they were used to only on-premise systems. You had to download the software onto a single computer, and that was your winemaking software. So the idea of cloud-based at the time, and again, the industry is a bit behind other industries at this, but they were afraid of security issues. While my data is in the cloud, this is proprietary information. Is it safe? So we had a lot of education to do there. I'm like, yes, this is the future. This is what will allow you to scale your business. This is what allows us to support you in a more proactive way without having to do manual maintenance refreshes behind the scenes. So yeah, that was absolutely an educational piece as well.
I would think that the proprietary, because you're blending wines, and every winery's got their secret sauce or their secret recipe on how to make the wine and their proprietary thing. by educating someone with a software, it lives in the cloud. Suddenly, I could imagine a lot of wineries being very leery as to putting all that data on the cloud, figuring that they might lose that little it factor that they have on their blending or whatnot. So how did you tell the wineries or give them confidence that their data was secure?
Sure. Yeah. So my two rebuttals to that. The first one is, well, if you're keeping paper records, or if you're only keeping records on one computer in your office, what happens if that winery burns down?
Yeah.
You've lost all of your records. And sadly, that really resonates right now in terms of Napa, Sonoma, and mostly Napa, Sonoma, but what the whole West Coast has gone through these last few years. But the other example that I always bring is your banking system is in the cloud. So if Google Cloud goes down, which is who hosts our instances, if they go down, you have much bigger problems than your winemaking software. It means that there are much larger global systems out there that you are without. And there's a lot of redundancy now with data centers around the nation, and it's just super, super secure. So that's usually what I tell folks that are still nervous about it.
Yeah, no, that's a huge education thing. We encounter that all the time in our business as well, going online.
Wow. So
tell me about your team. I mean, you've got a pretty amazing group of people there that you've surrounded yourself with.
We do. That's our secret sauce. It really is. It's our people, their experience, and their passion for what we're doing. And we're at I think over 20 folks now that work for InnoVint, and over half of them have direct winery operational experience, especially those that touch the sales process and our client success team. So it's always been super important to me and to InnoVint in general that we employ those that have firsthand experience, and they can really provide value above and beyond what a normal customer service team may provide in terms of consulting. We're always consulting. My sales team is consulting on winemaking practices from their first call with someone interested in what we do, through ongoing client success with how to best build a work order workflow to blend and drain and press and barrel down your wine. So fundamentally,
that's a huge value add. A lot of times when you're dealing with tech companies, they may know the tech, but they don't know why the tech is being used. They know how it works, why it works and where it should work. So providing that insight's huge, and you've built the team that enables that to happen.
We have, yeah. And we actually have engineers that have winemaking experience, which is amazing. It's so unique to find modern engineers that also understand the space. And it helps us develop a very valuable product as well, because like we've talked about, the product itself is super catered to winemaking and that operational workflow.
Yeah, that's great. Now, usually I laugh because a lot of times tech people end up starting in tech and then they become winemakers, or they start a winery. They IPO out. Your team's gone the opposite way. They started in winery and then they moved to tech, but they're still in the wine industry. But it's funny. I like that reverse circle. It may work out better. I mean, it does work out better. I can see why.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I would say that a lot in the beginning, that I am the anomaly, that you usually see tech start wineries and I'm the winemaker start a tech company. I think with the modern day and age and software being so prevalent in all of our lives, and this inflection point in the industry to think, oh, wow, software is actually really cool. And I can take my winemaking experience that maybe I'm not interested in pursuing full time anymore and go help out other winemakers by working for InnoVint. That's a great deal for me. And that works perfectly with where I'm trying to go with my career development.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what I can see in the past year about, we've all spent last year in the pandemic being distant and not being able to actually talk face to face with many of our coworkers. How has the past year shaped InnoVint?
So interestingly, We didn't miss a beat when everyone had to start working from home full time, because we've been a distributed team for the last 3 years or so. So, there's always things to learn about how best to manage remote practices and communication and all that. But I feel like we're pretty darn good at this point at running a really productive internal engine with how we build product, how we support our customers, and how we sell our product. So, and during COVID, we were on site much more in sales process. And now everyone had to turn to video for meetings during COVID. And it's actually helped InnoVint, because we've always embraced that, where you are demoing or supporting a software product. Well, guess what? We can just meet and share our screen. And it's actually that easy. And it's almost the same experience as if we were there in person, but it's more time effective for us. It's possibly more, time effective for the wineries to meet with us this way. So yeah, it hasn't been all bad for InnoVint.
Oh, that's good. And for the wineries themselves, though, your software program, I would think, or your software platform would be helping them a lot now that to eliminate the amount of time they need to actually be in there and actually looking at the barrels and getting that data on site. Since it's available in the cloud, they can do a lot of their work from home.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is one of the main value adds of InnoVint for sure right now, is that a winemaker can be at home that morning with their kids while their kids are on Zoom taking classes, and they can be assigning work to their seller team that has to be on site. So it allows them to have that accessibility and real-time insight into what's happening at their winery. And as their team is, updating these digital work orders that we support, they get real-time access to that. So they can actually sit on InnoVint at home and watch their team in progress. It's pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. Going forward in the pandemic, now this one's I'm going to ask a question that's a little broader beyond what you see other suppliers. So going forward, as we emerge from the pandemic, what challenges do you see vendors to wineries facing in 2021?
Wow, that is a big question. Vendors in general. Well, I think both wineries and vendors need to embrace a more flexible work-life balance in terms of, having to be in office all the time. I think a hybrid model is really effective, and this has caused us all to realize that. Winemaking will always have to be on site. They're always going to have to be making wine, but it can provide them with more flexibility, which is a part that I love, because with InnoVint, I always wanted to improve the professional lives of winemakers. Winemakers they're under the gun a lot, right? Like it's a tough lifestyle at times. You're, at times underpaid and overworked. Harvest is a really grinding time. If I can provide them with some peace of mind and a great solution to use to help them feel better about what they do, that's great. So, supporting these more progressive work models in the future will be essential for vendors to adapt to that and understand that, that to cater more to this new working model than some of the traditional sales channels and marketing channels have been done in the past.
Oh, that's excellent. That's good advice for sure. That work-life balance. Sorry there. So yeah, going forward into 2021, what's the next step at InnoVint? What's the next step that you guys are going? What's next on your horizon?
Well, we have a lot of plans.
I know you just launched. I know you just launched a new feature.
Yes, we launched new features a lot. Yes, that's right. So, an exciting new development at InnoVint is bringing this new mobile experience to our.
That's the one.
Our customers. Yeah. So, with our mission to be a mobile first company and to keep encouraging and supporting remote work, we're tripling down on that by developing this mobile app that's super modern, that can run on any device at any time, even offline. So
That's
if
amazing.
you are in the vineyard, back way off the cell grid, and you don't have obviously Wi-Fi out there, you can actually access and enter information on your blocks in the field, which is really big. Same in the cellar. If you're deep in a cave, obviously you don't have cell service or Wi-Fi. This is a common thing at wineries and vineyards. You can run your operation offline. So that's exciting. It's also a beautiful app that my teams invest a lot into. So I think this will definitely help promote us and feed us into the future of mobile.
That's the one thing about your platform. It is a beautiful app. It's very, there's a lot of design thought that went into it.
Thank you for saying that.
A lot of times in production software, it looks like a modified Excel grid. Your stuff is actually a pleasure to walk through, and I do have to commend you on that.
Thank you for saying that. And it's something that we're proud of, because we understand not all wineries have the most tech savvy staff that like to or are used to using comprehensive software products. So we like to keep it as simple and accessible as possible for everybody.
And that's so important, because not everyone has a full degree in enology. Not everyone has all that science background or all that tech background. A lot of times someone really needs that user intuitive interface that allows you to get the job done, to get the compliance documents submitted.
Yep.
Your team makes it easy. So you mentioned a couple people at the start. Who are some of your mentors?
Oh, wow. So there's been a few winemaking wise. Bill Brosseau definitely is one. Bill, if you're listening, we haven't talked in a while, we should catch up. He was kind of my initial mentor early on after college, just helping foster my career development as a winemaker. And then Michael Michaud, when I was younger than that, was my first true exposure to the industry. So I'll always be grateful for him. And then there's been people along the way that have just genuinely supported my efforts and what I'm trying to do. I had a lot of support. I don't think I need to name names, but when I was transitioning from the tech industry to starting the software company, a lot of the folks that had met me in the tech industry were just so supportive and interested in investing and just totally behind this initiative, which was so wonderful.
What was the best advice? Oh, sorry. How did you?
No.
What was the best advice you got from Bill?
Oh, wow. I don't know if it was a tidbit of advice. It was just that kind of background support and encouragement to take on more than what I probably would have thought I could take on at that time. Because I was in my early 20s and I was like, I can't run a wine business, a new wine brand. This is crazy. I don't have any experience doing this. And he just helped, facilitate and foster that development, as well as allowing me to keep active in winemaking and work with his team and be on site, still doing punch downs and pump overs with his team, working with my fruit during harvest. So just around the board, just very supportive.
Oh, that's great. It's having someone being able to give you the confidence and to empower you to make those changes and just build your life is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you talk about mentors in the software industry, because it was new for me, I didn't have a network in SaaS. I met a lot of people along the way, both in the wine industry and software, that helped to facilitate my growth. So Craig Hall with the Hall and Walt Winery in Napa has always been very supportive of InnoVint and helped, coach me in a couple ways. I have some SaaS CEO advisors that were running SaaS companies as well that I would tap into as needed. So yeah, you have to find the mentors, the advisors that help you at those critical decision points. You need to run them by people, or else you're isolated and you feel it helps tapping into those that have experience with where you're struggling. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Now being a CEO, having built a huge tech company, been a winemaker, as a mentor yourself, what advice can you give someone that's maybe just entering the enology program at Davis, or someone that's just starting to become or want to be a winemaker or a tech software engineer?
Yeah. Think outside the box, right? Like especially if you're in school, there's so much that you're not taught that is an option for you. And I would have never imagined that I would end up here ever in a million years. Never. Like I would have never thought I would start a software company while studying wine. But you sit in the high times and the low times and absorb everything you can, and things just happen naturally. There's a path for everyone. There's a path for them. And it can be beautiful. It'll be challenging. You'll have great successes and great challenges. But it builds character, and it's really fulfilling.
That's awesome advice. I mean, don't ignore the life unfolding before you, and don't resist some of those chances that you may not have envisioned being your future. That's great advice.
I was lost. I will admit I was lost for some time when I realized that I didn't want to do winemaking full time, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And I said, what am I going to do? I have so much passion and drive to do something great, but it's not what I studied. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? And life takes you where it needs to.
Oh, I can relate. I graduated with a degree in philosophy and Attic Greek. Thought I was going to be a professor of philosophy. Ended up selling wine for 10 years and loved it. Never really stopped. So yeah, I can definitely, your advice is definitely something that's dear to my heart, because I have pursued those passions and found enjoyment in ways that I didn't know that I'd have before.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it's been great talking with you. As we're kind of wrapping down, I always like to ask some sort of fun fact. Well, what are you drinking these days?
Well, I just got a really exciting shipment of wine from one of InnoVint's clients, Carboy Wineries in Colorado. And I think they're not the largest, but they're the fastest growing, I believe. And they have a really smart winemaking team, and they're doing really high quality stuff. And I just had their Tiraldigo, which is a varietal that they grow in Colorado. And being on the West Coast, we don't get exposure to wines like that. So it was so fun.
Not from Colorado.
Trying wines. Not from Colorado.
I don't think I've ever had a Colorado wine. Where are they located?
Let's see. Where's their grapes grown? I think they're in Grand Junction where the grape growing region is, but they have some tasting rooms. I think they're in Denver and Breckenridge and maybe one other spot. But they're experimenting with all sorts of stuff, and it's just fun to take that. It's fun to take my palate on the journey with them, because they're doing really neat things.
Yeah. Describe it a little bit. I can't even imagine a wine from Colorado. It is a very warm area, that Grand Junction area. So I think it would be a great area for wine.
Yeah, really, really warm. And then from what I understand, you get a lot of curveballs weather-wise in the growing season that can take you off course. So it's a challenging climate, but the Tiraldigo at least it kind of reminded me of a Petite Syrah, where it had a lot of density of color and flavor, and the aroma profile was beautiful, but it was lighter on the tannin structure. Really, really unique. It was really, really nice. And it's something that I think the winemaking team is proud of there, and they're going to keep doing. So it's fun.
I'm going to check it out. That sounds fantastic.
Awesome. That's great.
Well, Ashley, where can people find you online?
They can find out about InnoVint at innovint.us. That is our marketing website. And you can learn all about what we do and our team and our product offering and how we can support all size wineries. If you're making, 2,000 cases to 100,000 cases plus, we have a solution for you.
That's fantastic. So today we've been talking with Ashley DuBois Leonard from InnoVint, CEO, learned about her winery platform solution. Just a fantastic solution. Go to innovint.us to check it out. And thank you very much, Ashley, for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.